All right, let's jump right in. We're going to dive into a really powerful idea today, that for capitalism to actually work, to really thrive, it leans on something you won't always find in an economics textbook. We're talking about its most essential, most fundamental safeguard.
So what is it? What's the one thing that keeps a market economy from just spiraling into total chaos and corruption? It's not just about innovation, and it's definitely not just about profit. It's something much, much deeper.
The answer? It's the rule of law. Now that might sound simple, almost obvious, but this one concept is the absolute bedrock on which the entire system is built. Without it, the whole thing just becomes incredibly fragile. So let's break down why that is.
But to really get this, we have to be super clear on our terms. What do we even mean when we say capitalism? And what exactly is the rule of law? Let's make sure we're all on the same page here.
First up, capitalism. At its very core, it's really about these three things: people and businesses freely choosing to trade, having the right to own their own stuff, and money flowing to where it can be most productive. But just think about that for a second. Would you really make a deal with someone you couldn't trust?
And that's exactly where the rule of law comes into play. It's the framework that builds that trust. It's the promise that the rules of the game are clear, that they apply to everybody equally, and that they're not going to suddenly change on you tomorrow. I mean, that predictability, it's everything. And this quote here from the economist F.A. Hayek just hits the nail on the head. Business isn't just about what's happening right now, it's all about planning for the future. And the rule of law is what gives you the confidence to, say, plant a seed today, knowing that you'll actually be around to harvest the fruit tomorrow.
So how does this all play out in the real world? Well, it's kind of like a chain reaction. The rule of law builds trust, which basically acts like the lubricant for the entire economic engine. That trust encourages people to invest because they're not scared their stuff is going to get taken away. And that in turn really helps to curb corruption, because clear rules are the enemy of shady backroom deals. And what you're left with is the stable ground where entrepreneurs feel safe enough to take risks, innovate, and create.
And hey, this isn't just some abstract theory. History is a powerful and sometimes pretty brutal laboratory for what happens when this bonds between markets and law is respected and what happens when it's completely shattered.
You can really see the two paths laid out here. On one side, you've got stability and trust, which fuel confidence and let economies bounce back from a crisis. But on the other side, in systems where the law is just a weapon for the powerful, whether you're talking about oligarchies or tyrannies, you get rampant corruption and total uncertainty. Enforcement becomes a whim, investors panic, and the whole economic engine just grinds to a halt.
And the cost of getting this wrong? It's absolutely staggering. We are talking about trillions, with a T, trillions of dollars in value that can just, poof, evaporate when people lose faith in the legal and regulatory system. And that's not just some abstract number. That's lost jobs, failed businesses, and dreams that never get off the ground.
Let's look at a real-world example from 19th century England. When the Overend Gurney Bank went under, it caused a massive panic. But the system didn't break. And why not? Because there was a predictable legal infrastructure in place, fair courts, clear banking rules, that just kicked into gear. That predictability is what restored trust and allowed the market to recover. It's a perfect case study of the rule of law acting as a kind of economic shock absorber.
But here's the twist. The threat to the rule of law doesn't always come from some outside force. Sometimes the most dangerous threat is actually born from capitalism's own success.
And this is where it gets really fascinating. There's a paradox here. The very same engine that drives all this innovation and growth in capitalism can also lead to a huge consolidation of economic and political power. And once that power gets concentrated enough, it can be used to bend and eventually break the very rules that made all that success possible in the first place.
And this is how that decay happens. It starts with power getting consolidated. Then, those powerful interests start to capture the institutions. We're talking courts, regulators, and use them for their own private gain. Before you know it, real competition just vanishes, replaced by a rigged game of cronyism and insider deals. And the end result? Both the economy and the justice system get completely hollowed out from the inside.
Okay, so if this bond is so vital and the threats are so real, what's the solution? Well, the argument here is that it requires a constant, active defense from the very people who claim to believe in free markets.
So what does defending the system actually look like? Well, it starts with resisting cronyism, no matter what form it takes, or whose side it benefits. It means fiercely protecting the independence of our courts so they can stay neutral. It's about demanding clear, transparent rules, not thousand-page laws with hidden loopholes. And maybe most importantly, it's about insisting that the rules apply equally to everyone, from the smallest startup to the biggest corporation. Period.
Look, what this all boils down to is a simple, powerful truth. Defending free markets and defending the rule of law, they're not two different fights. They're two sides of the very same coin. You literally cannot have one without the other. To be a true champion for capitalism, you have to be a fierce champion for justice and the law.
And that brings us to one final question I want you to think about. If these two things, capitalism and the rule of law, are really woven together this tightly, what are the real consequences for our economy and for our whole society when we just let the foundations of law, things like fairness, predictability, and justice, start to erode? The answer is something worth wrestling with. Thanks for watching.